Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about a specific topic that is really big. It's been big for a long time. A lot of people deal with this day in and day out. They don't even know that they're dealing with it. And it does affect people. It affects people at work, it affects people at home and relationships. And we're going to be talking about mental health. And today, I'm really excited to be interviewing Dr. Anna Marie Frank. And she is absolutely someone that really has a good sense of what's going on with mental health. And she has a lot of experience with this. And I think that this is going to be very beneficial for you to watch and listen. And I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So, Anna, how did you get involved with mental health and why is it so important to you?
Yeah. Well, first, I'd like to say that we don't have a mental health issue in this country. We have a brain health issue in this country.
Okay.
And I had struggled with my brain health since I was in high school. I had experiences with depression, didn't really know what to call it back then. I had good grades. I was a varsity four sport athlete. I had a roof over my head, so really no apparent reason, but I still wasn't okay inside. Went on to college, continued there, got worse, entered my career where I had health insurance or sick insurance, as I call it. And I thought, oh, okay, I can go to a psychiatrist because then they're going to give me pills to help fix this quote unquote chemical imbalance, which we have no way of testing, by the way, in my brain to fix me. And so I was 22 years old and I went and spent 15, 20 minutes at a psychiatrist's office. I was put on 3 mind altering medications. And knowing now what I know, our brain isn't even fully developed till we're 25.
Okay.
And I took those medications. I was following protocol and I kept getting worse and I kept getting worse. And this was affecting me at work. This was affecting my sleep. This was just affecting me in so many ways that I thought, you know what? It's probably easier if I'm just not alive. And I
Wow.
got to like a rock bottom point. And what was crazy is in that rock bottom point, I actually thought I'll go back to the doctor and then I'll have him change my meds. And that's what I need to do. And I had an experience in that doctor's office and it wasn't a pleasant one. And I got up and I left that office with a newfound, you are the only person that can make you happy. You are the only person that can fix this. And I set forth on a journey to literally rewire my brain, restore my biology and my health so I could live a happy and whole life. And literally, I've been doing that ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. So this happened in your early 20s
hmm
and was there some kind of lead up to this? I mean, was it like, 18, 19 or, did it happen, when you were a teenager as you're kind of getting to a young
Yeah.
adult stage?
Well, I think it was gradually happening. I think there's a space where in our lives where, from when we're in high school to some of us go to college, some of us go in the military, some of us go to trade school, and then we enter the workforce
Right.
without a fully developed brain, by the way. And this is a very confusing time. Also, I wasn't eating well. I wasn't getting enough sunlight. I was exercising actually too much. And so where there were all these little things that I didn't realize that were impacting my mental health, the relationships that I was having, the pressure that I put on myself within my career. And so I think it's just like that domino effect that starts to happen. And until we restore our foundations of health to help our brains, because our brains are only 2% of our body, yet our brains utilize up to 20 to 25% of all the oxygen, nutrients, everything we put in. So if we're eating, I grew up where low fat diets were a fad. And so, doing the frozen dinners and the
Right.
calorie counting
Oh
and
yeah.
all of that, that is destroying our brain health. And so it was literally, I think, the perfect storm coming through. And it just, and then the medications just was, that was like the tipping point. That is what sent me over the edge and really really damaged me. And actually now I don't look at it that I look at it as like what a gift I was given to go through that. And
Right.
luckily I had this little light inside of me that said, you can shift this, you can change it. And so, yeah, that's when I set forth on a journey to just like naturally heal myself. And that's what I help other people do.
That's amazing because, not a lot of people would take that path or take that mindset. They'd
Yeah.
be very upset about, that particular situation
Hmm.
or continue to spiral down a
Yeah.
pathway of, finding, different alternatives as you mentioned,
Yeah.
try this medication, try
Hmm.
that medication, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is that it wasn't just one thing for you
Mm-mm.
that put you in this space. It was a number of things,
Yeah.
nutrition,
Yeah.
just kind of overall activity
Hmm.
that had really put you in that space of, getting to where you were. So,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. I mean, how long did it take you to really kind of figure that out though? Like, was
Oh,
it early or
I mean, I had, you go up and down and, I had children. I had postpartum with my both of my children. It wasn't as bad the second time around because I knew more what to do. So it's just been like a learning curve of, how to take care of myself. And the more I study, the more I research, the more I recognize what really needs to be done versus what advertisements told me versus what the medical industry has told me. And so it's literally reprogramming the way I view health and wellness through the lens of holistic health versus the lens of sick care. And I think what's interesting is we usually blame that last thing that came along that took us out at the knees as if that was the thing. You
right?
know, the boss that came in that totally changed everything in the organization and they just don't know because this isn't going to work. It's happened before. When really it's not the boss. It's the fact that you're not taking care of yourself. It's the fact that you're not getting good sleep at night. It's the fact that you're on your phone late at night. It's the fact that you're eating too late at night and you're eating the wrong foods, that you have, you know, troubled relationships. But then we go and we blame that last thing that came along. And it can be something as beautiful as a wedding, right? I mean, I think of women who have been in weddings and bridesmaids and then they end up being in the wedding and then they're mad at the bride and they don't even have a relationship after the wedding because oh she was so demanding. It was just crazy when really it was maybe you were having financial struggles because you were spending your money on the wrong things and you weren't taking care of yourself. So when I look at brain health and I look at wellness, it is all pillars of wellness: financial wellness, nutritional wellness, occupational wellness, spiritual wellness. And people try to silo their life as if it's not going to domino and affect every aspect of their life.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people, maybe in our culture as a whole, always think about like, hey, if I can just do this one thing, like in business,
Yeah.
or if they're an athlete,
Mhm.
if I can only make it this far, if I
Mhm.
only do these things, then it starts to become something that is really one mindset of, oh, this
Yeah.
is it. This is going to get me to where you're going. What you're saying is, well, with brain health, I mean, it's like anything else. It's all of the little things.
Mhm.
That's what I'm hearing you say. It's
Oh,
not just the
absolutely.
one thing.
Yeah.
It's all of the little things to really focus on. But
Yeah.
I think today, because people are so busy,
Mhm.
and I think information overload is
Yes.
a very real thing.
Mhm.
I remember when I was young, this was something that was interesting. We would watch 24 hours and 24 minutes. It was like headline news. That was like a big thing. And you'd get little tidbits
Mhm.
of everything that was going on in the world. But today, every 5 seconds, if your phone has notifications on it,
Mhm.
you're, oh, this happened.
Yeah.
Oh, this happened on the other side of the planet.
Yes.
Or this happened on the other side of the coast. And I think that's kind of overwhelming
Mhm.
because I think we're constantly being stimulated with information, good and bad.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that has a big thing to contribute to all of these things, but I'd be curious to get your kind of take on that as well.
Well, first, I think the real win in life is to be okay inside no matter what's going on around you.
Okay.
And when we show up and we listen to different things, we filter those things to validate how we think and what's happened in our past. So oftentimes we're allowing our past and the negative things from our past, the emotions from the past to dictate our future and how we're seeing the world in the present moment. So, one of the things I work with clients and organizations on is getting the employee to really look and view their past and the challenges they've had their past through the lens of what was the value gained, what was the powerful thing they took from that lesson, and you use that lesson for your future self and you leave the emotions in the past. So, for example, I was in an 18-year career and I had this inner calling that I needed to step away from that career and go into what I do today. And that was very apparent in my being. I knew that. And at that time, towards the end of before I left, I had this boss that came in and I felt like I wasn't appreciated and valued for the knowledge I have and for my passion and how I want to show up in the world. And I really had challenging times with him and resented him for a while. Well, now when I go back and I look at that, the value gained of that is I was being like encouraged to leave purposely because I had other big stuff to do.
Right.
And I wasn't listening because I was using fear to say, oh, well, you're doing really good. You've been here 18 years. You have a 6-figure income. And, how are you going to replace this? But it was like, you've heard the thing about the water bottle, right? You go to Costco, you spend 25 cents on a water bottle. You go to the grocery store, you spend $1.25 on a water bottle. You go to the ball game, you're paying $4 for the water bottle. You go to the airport, you're paying $8 for the water bottle. Same water bottle. It's just your value. Are you in the wrong place or are you in the right place?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting that you bring
Right.
that up because I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you're feeling undervalued, it's just that you're not in the right place. They're not
Right.
seeing the value that you have. And sometimes that's because you're just not in the right position to be able to do and be who you are truly meant to be. And then oftentimes, we also hold back. We're in an organization and we have all these ideas and these things we want to do and how we want to show up. But we feel, one, like we can't speak up for ourselves. Two, we're too tired, right? We're not taking care of ourselves. We feel like I don't have the energy. Oh, if I brought this up, there would be more work on my plate and I can't even handle the work that's on my plate. And so there's all these factors that go into our level of success and well-being, but it all goes back to how we are treating ourselves, how we are thinking about our life, how we are speaking about our life, and what we're putting in the body.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think in organizations, when you're doing work with companies and their employees, there's so much emphasis, I think, on productivity and,
Yeah.
what's the end result, right? We're very much driven by that. And I get it. It's
Mhm.
the numbers, the numbers, the numbers. I mean, you see it all over the place. And I think there's a lot of element to that where people go, all right, why is this not happening? And I'm talking about, from entrepreneurs, business owners, all the way down to your top level management.
Yeah.
Everybody in your organization, has some level of, I think the proper term is KPI, right?
Mhm.
Key performance indicator. And I understand that
Mhm.
you look at it that way. But what we're seeing is that it's almost like, that is the very thing, if it's not understood correctly,
Mhm.
is not very achievable if people aren't on the same page. And I think what we're talking about is people do have their wires crossed and,
Yeah.
and maybe they're focused in the wrong areas.
Yeah. And I think too, in organizations, it's up to us as leaders to enroll people in the vision.
Right.
Not to tell them what the vision is. It's to enroll them, help them become a part of that vision. And it's really hard for people to see the big picture and the vision of things when they are struggling personally, when they have brain fog,
Right.
when they're having, these issues going on internally. And so one of the things I love to do is go into organizations and give, these opportunities to improve individuals' foundations of health. If you have a stronger foundation, you're going to be able to show up so much more powerfully. If you get well, you're able to sell, which is amazing. And
Right.
so I think we're looking at things backwards. We're not looking at the whole person. We're looking at them as, oh, you come to work and you need to do X, Y, and Z. And if you just want a robot, we can wait a few more years. We'll all have those. But the true essence of community and a company should be in the well-being of their staff. And I think what's happening is we confuse the 1-800 number on the back of an insurance card. the employee assistant program. If you're really needing someone to talk to, just call this number. And we're saying, oh yeah, that's our employee assistant program. We got a program, and that's our wellness. And that is just so wrong in
Well,
so
right,
many
because
ways.
you're saying it's like,
It's a great thing, but like, no, like that's the reductionist approach. And that's what we do in this country is we look at things in a reductionist view, right? Like you have your doctor for your sinuses, you have your doctor for your gut health, you have your doctor for your knee pain, you have your doctor for
everything.
everything, when it's a symphony. How the body works as a symphony. In your organization, it's a symphony,
Right.
right? So we all have to be working together.
Right. So, I mean, I think what you're saying is checking the box. I mean, I could see where it would be really easy if somebody is struggling in an organization for somebody to say, hey, call the EAP program. I mean, we have it. It's
Yeah.
almost like I don't really know what to do with this situation, but call
Yeah.
that number.
Right.
And I think what ends up happening is ultimately, whoever is seeking that help is not getting the help. And then it just kind of spirals where they don't feel that someone cares about them or the
Yeah.
organization. And we hear it a lot because we work with a lot of companies, and we talk with the employees, especially when they're interested in learning more about their health insurance and their needs. And we find it kind of interesting because they will bring that up, but a lot of times too, I feel like it's such a disconnect, where they don't even know what they're supposed to do, and they're just looking for something to check the box themselves,
Right.
to be able to get the result that they want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think most people just don't know. I think most people are doing the best they can with where they're at. So, having that personal growth from the bottom up opportunities is monumental. And, one of the things with insurance is I was thinking about this the other day. We all have car insurance, we all have house insurance, right? And then people have health insurance or sick insurance. So when you need an oil change in your car, you don't call your car insurance and say, hey, I need an oil change. You need to pay for this.
Right.
Or why aren't you paying for this? When the paint on the walls of your home are peeling and you need to repaint your home, you don't call your insurance company and say, hey, the paint is peeling. I need you to pay to paint my house.
Right.
Health insurance is for emergency situations.
Right.
And we are not hiring the health coach or the nutritionist or the personal trainer or going to a holistic specialist or the herbologist or, the massage therapist or the EMDR person. I mean, we're not going to these practitioners
Right.
that know how to help you restore your foundations of health and prevent dis-ease in the body because our insurance doesn't pay for it. And it's a mindset thing, which is
Right.
fascinating to me. And so if insurance doesn't pay for it, then we're not doing it.
That is interesting because I hear that a lot. Well, I didn't get this done because the health insurance doesn't cover it. And it does frustrate people because
100%.
they have this expectation
Mhm.
that since they're paying so much money for this,
Uh-huh.
that it should be doing more. And I think so that's interesting. So we have a little bit of a back and forth. So you have providers that have people that come see them that have an expectation that when they pay that copay, they're going to walk away with something. So naturally, most of the time somebody's going to get a prescription. If they don't
Yeah.
get a prescription, I hear doctors say this too. It's like, well, you really don't need that, to get better, just get some rest, drink a lot of fluids, and this should take care of itself in a couple of days,
Yeah.
depending on the situation. And they say that people get frustrated
Yeah.
because they're not getting something to walk out with. So I do understand what you mean by that, because you're saying that there are different things that people can go seek, but if the insurance doesn't cover it, then they don't do it. So it's kind of a little bit of a, roundabout
Yeah.
here that people are going through.
Yeah.
So
73% of adults in America are overweight or obese. Over
yes,
20% of people in America, adults, have a mental health challenge in their life. So when you look at those numbers and they keep going up, why do we keep going back to the same practices
right,
that have gotten us there to begin with?
right,
Now, Western medicine is fantastic in emergency situations. They are keeping people alive, absolutely. But from my own experience, I don't trust it when it comes to prevention, when it comes to maintaining my foundations of health. And literally, most doctors, when they go to medical school, they're getting zero nutrition training.
Right.
Zero. Or maybe about 20 contact hours of nutrition training in medical school. So, one, we can't show up to these practitioners expecting them to help you restore your foundations of health when that language has never been taught to them, and that's not how they're trained.
Right.
The hospitals, doctors' offices, they get paid by every prescription, every surgery, every billable thing that they could put on there to bill insurance. So if it doesn't have a billing code, you're most likely not going to get that.
I see. Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
it is that scenario that we kind of face with, the cost of health insurance is so expensive. The cost to go to the doctor is so expensive.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times, I get this sense when I'm talking to employers, because we have these conversations all the time. Why does it keep going up? What can I do?
Yeah. Behavior health claims.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to.
So that piece is, why don't we just talk a little bit about kind of some of the specifics and some of the programs that you've rolled out with, some of the companies that you work with.
Yeah.
And how does that work? And what is the type of client that you're looking for? Because somebody's got to be willing to invest the time to do this too.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think the companies that are going to be more like we need to do something are going to be the self-insured. So you
Right.
have your self-insured organizations, and then you have your organizations that are in a group policy. So the group
Right.
policy, they're sharing the cost. Self-insured, they're paying for every little penny that goes out. Like
Right.
anyone goes to the doctor, they're paying for everything. So when it comes to self-insured, there are going to be these behavior health claims that come through: smoking, not wearing a seatbelt, emergency visits at the ER when really
Right.
you don't need to go to the ER for that. I know back pain is a huge one. Anxiety, going to the ER for anxiety because people think they're having heart attacks and their heart palpitations. These are, cost so much money.
Right.
I'll give you an example. I had one of our clients, herself and her husband. One was an employee, one was a beneficiary on their insurance. Started coming to these webinars and in-person events that we were doing. Over a year's time, lost over 100 pounds between the two of them, went off of 11 medications.
Wow. 11 medications?
Between the two of them. Okay, you can't quantify that, right?
Right.
So as a business owner, you're like, well, where's my ROI?
Right.
So one of the biggest organizations I worked for started their employee well-being program, and over 4 years saved $2.4 million in behavior health claims.
Wow.
So this is educating the employees, not just on health insurance. No one wants to sit around and learn about health insurance.
Right.
We need to educate people on how to take care of themselves. Practical tools to shift their way they're thinking about their life and the way they're speaking about their life, because you can actually change the biochemical makeup in the body in 150 to 300 milliseconds by shifting a thought alone. So when we talk about, you go to the doctor, they're like, oh, well, you're under a lot of stress. That's why all these things are happening. And you're
Right.
like, well, how do I change that? Well, you change that by shifting the way you're viewing your life, by the way you're viewing your boss, by the way you're viewing your job. I can't tell you how many people we've talked, and it's like, okay, what if you shifted this? What if this wasn't a challenge? Or what if that email you just told me your boss sent you actually didn't mean this whole story you made up around it? What if it just meant, like, because we do this thing where we bottom line it. So what if you bottom lined, all your boss asked was for this on this date? And you made it sound like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. They don't even know. Nobody's helping me. And you turn it into this whole stressful story when all your boss did was ask you to have this item on this date. And you made it into so much more. And what that does to the biological response in the body, to the cortisol levels, to your microbiome in the gut, that disruption causes dis-ease. And it's all based on how you're viewing your boss and the story you're telling yourself, because oftentimes that story is, we all know the story's bigger in our head, right?
Right. Well,
We've all been
everybody
there.
over exaggerates,
I
right?
mean,
A little bit, like just a little
yeah.
bit, right? So
So when we do the bottom lining, what happens is we take you out of that limbic state of the brain, that amygdala that is causing a lot of anxiety and worry. And, when you shift out of that, you go into your prefrontal cortex to use your executive function thinking. What if we had employees that were constantly using executive function thinking?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Cortisol levels would be down. Stress would be down. People would be sleeping better. They wouldn't be as nervous. They'd have more ideas. They'd be more available for creativity. And yeah,
I think a lot of companies probably, desire this, right? I,
100%.
I, I don't even want to say probably. They
They
do
do.
desire this, right?
Yes.
So they desire this. They want this. I just think that they don't know how to get it
Hmm.
and how to make it work
Yeah.
because it is a lot of work. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of functional pieces that you're talking about
Hmm.
that make a lot of sense because, right, how many
Yeah.
times does communication get in the way of, just
Yes.
workplace environment and culture?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times what we don't realize is that I think you said it best. Wow, that was just a simple request.
Hmm.
You need to get this
Yeah.
done by this date. And all of a sudden it turned into this huge
Huge thing.
deal of, a lot of extra effort. And that really does come back down to executive training.
Hmm.
So when you're talking about mental health, it's not about just like listening to everybody's problems. You're actually
No.
saying, hey, that's the furthest thing that I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm not pitching that.
Yeah.
I'm actually pitching, how do people actually function in an organization?
Hmm.
How do you get your point across?
Hmm.
And how do you get, the result that you actually want? And so it's a little bit of time. So generally speaking, in your programs, when you're working with these clients, depending on those specifics,
Yeah.
how long does it really take? I mean, what type of, time investment are
Yeah.
people looking into?
So the National Wellness Institute says about 3 to 5 years to really start to see a change in the ROI.
Right.
For every dollar of general wellness you invest in your organization, usually get about $1.50 back.
Okay.
For every dollar you invest in disease prevention, diabetes, heart disease, really educating, the employees on these diseases that are 100% preventable,
Right.
you actually get an ROI of about $3. And again, this is hard to quantify.
Okay.
One organization I was working with, we did some just testing, and this individual found out he was pre-diabetic. Well, he's driving students around in vans and coaching kids. What
Right.
would happen if he had a diabetic episode
Oh, yeah.
in that van? You can't put a cost on that.
Right.
Another person had found out like their blood pressure was fine, their cholesterol was fine. Well, then they got a triglyceride test, and their triglycerides were over 450.
Okay.
And all this individual did was stop drinking 2 Cokes a day. And within a few months, his triglycerides came back down to where he should be. Triglycerides are a huge indicator of heart disease.
Okay.
And so it's like educating, well, what is a triglyceride? What is cholesterol? Because people hear these numbers and they like, but what does that mean, right? They're like, okay, yeah, I need to lose a little bit of weight or I need to eat more fruits and vegetables, but what is it really doing inside? So we'll come in and we'll do, webinars, we'll do in-person trainings, and we do talk about the health and the biology, but we always go back to the brain health
Right.
and how the brain is functioning and how you're thinking about the world, how you're viewing the world, all of that, because you have to go back to that. And then we'll go in and we do cooking classes, we do meal prep classes, we'll do paint nights, right? For the just relaxation. We do mocktail classes because substance abuse is a real thing. So,
Right.
could we make a fun mocktail with non-alcoholic drink and feel like we're participating in the happy hour with the organization?
Right.
So we're giving people skills and things that they can do so they can just view health and wellness in a different way. One of the other things that I love doing besides executive coaching with some of our teams that we work with is small group 6-week programs. So this is where we'll take about a dozen people in the organization. We meet every day via Zoom for like 30 minutes, and it's all about mindset shifting.
Okay.
And the breakthroughs that come through that are like just insane. And that's literally 30 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes every week for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And the results that people get from that are just astronomical. Having the conversation that they've been avoiding, And they're so glad they finally had the courage and the vocabulary to communicate that to the person they needed to talk to. Shifting some things in their home that were actually getting in the way with them getting up, having a good morning routine, and coming into work grounded and feeling centered. So these are just all really important things, but it comes back to knowledge and skills because people do the best they can with what they know.
Right. And if they don't know,
They don't know.
they don't know. So I can really tell that you're really passionate about what you do. I can tell that this is something that you really care about and you want to make a difference. So I really appreciate you spending a little bit of time educating us and kind of, talking about these things because, people need to hear this. I think business owners need to hear this, HR departments, management teams,
Mhm.
because I think this is something that is real. So how do people find you?
Yeah, they can go to drannamarie.com, drannamarie.com. On social media, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. Our company, Happy Whole You, is on Instagram, and Dr. Anna Marie on Instagram as well. And I do want to throw in one other thing.
Okay.
So HR people are like my favorite people.
Okay.
I love them. They do so much and they really care about the organization and the individuals there. When we started our employee well-being programs for companies, the last thing I wanted to do was put another task on HR.
Okay.
To be honest, they get a lot dumped on
They
them.
do a lot.
So not only do we go in our wellness programs and provide these amazing services, but we do the admin back end of everything. So
Okay.
we are contacting the employees that sign up for the events. We are reminding them of the links. We are reminding them of, what's coming up that they would like to do. So we take that burden off of HR. If they need to send something out to the staff, we don't send it directly in the company, depending on the organization. We will have the whatever it is that they need to send out, and the email is ready to go. The printables are ready to go. And so we really try to take that off the burden of the company.
No, that's really good to know because I think probably one of the biggest obstacles is going to be how much work
Yeah.
and
One
who
more
is
thing.
going to do
Yes.
the work, right? And to be
100%.
able to get this thing done.
Yeah.
So that's amazing that you guys really administer that because I
Yeah.
think a lot of wellness programs, I mean, I've seen a ton,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That
It's
have
coming.
been
It's an
presented to me.
app. It's
It's an
a
app or it's
one and
very like
done.
self-serve.
Yeah.
They try to make it easy, but really what's going on is that what are you really getting out of that? And
Right.
people don't get um,
Connection.
connection is a good word
Yeah.
to be able to look at it if they're really not getting some
Yeah.
level of vision and purpose of why are we doing this. And I think a lot of times we go back in the earlier part of this episode when we talked about checking the box.
Mhm.
We don't want to be checking the boxes.
Right.
Organizations want to actually make an impact.
Mhm.
So ultimately everybody wins because you're going to get that ROI, but better yet, your organization's going to function better.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that you came on the show today because I think it's important for
Yeah.
people to hear this and know that there are other options out
Mhm.
there. And even though you did say that, a lot of people that are looking, from a cost benefit standpoint, are maybe in the self-insured space, but this can really work well for smaller employers too, right? So
Oh,
they may
yeah.
not be able to get a direct correlation,
Yeah.
but less sick days,
Mhm.
more functionality,
Presenteeism.
right?
Yeah. Yes. We have actually some organizations local in Bakersfield that will call us and say, I have an employee who's been out for 3 days. They're actually struggling and we'd like to send them in just to do any service they want. And then you can bill us. That on average is about $200, $250. The last time we just did that for an employer, the employee was back the next day. Right. So there's a cost involved with it that is actually a huge benefit at the same time. And so, it's just we're old school in the sense we create that one-on-one connection with the people in your organization, that community connection, and that's really, really important to us.
That's great. That's amazing. Well, thank you for joining us on the show today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on this very, very important issue that I think people need to understand. So, well, thanks for listening. If you find this episode helpful, I highly encourage you to share it to somebody who needs to hear it. And we always encourage you to subscribe. You can find us on Hey Charles Biz on YouTube, Hey Charles 77 on Instagram, and Charles Ernst on LinkedIn. See you next time.